Nashi, you are online. Now, you live in the UK. You left Albania many, many years ago now, but you left it physically. You research a lot. You are a fountain of knowledge on what happened during communism. You're writing a book on Muzine Kokolari, and you are very passionate about what happened during communism and making sure the correct information is communicated. So welcome to Inside Albania, first of all.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite. But I met Mr. Pesolari.
Hello.
A few years ago. Hello.
Yeah.
His story is extraordinary, and there are probably hundreds of stories similar or sort of similar, which describes what happened under communism and how people were desperate to leave the Albania, which under Hoxha didn't become a paradise, of a garden of paradise, but became a garden of internment camps and prisons and gulags and deportations, places which people were just never safe and felt intimidated and threatened wherever they were, even they were doing work in the field. But in my case, it's slightly different. I didn't leave Albania during the communism. I was a young girl, but I've gone through a lot. But nothing unlike a story that the gentleman just told and shared with us. But I would like to go back, if I may, what happened 80 years ago in Tirana, if that's okay.
Yes.
With you.
Yes.
So something that the generation of the gentlemen there and my generation and 40 years old today was a lot of truth denied or not told for political reasons or for their political gain of the communists. Some facts or of the material I have researched has been from War Imperial Museum in London and Albanian researchers and tons of academic books that have published what happened in Tirana between 20th of October to 17th of November. So I'd like to start with Mehmet Shehu on 25th of October released or distributed some leaflets and called on Radio Bar all the intellectuals to surrender, all the intellectuals who have no blood in their hands to surrender to the partisans, which many people and hundreds of them believed it, and they surrounded the partisans. By the end of October again, the partisans didn't allow the British officers that were assigned to the partisans to enter Tirana without permission. But one of them, Philip Oliver, entered Tirana secretly, and he makes a report. And in his report says that partisans are claiming there are 3,000 strong Germans in Tirana, but actually are no more than 300. Very interesting fact that, we should imagine Tirana a life that continued. People did shopping, a lot of people at that time, fearing the bombardments. They were taking refugees or moving outside Tirana. Partisans moved secretly just before 31st of October on northeast of Tirana after Skanderbeg Square. So the civilian populations were expecting them as liberators. They were looking forward to see the day of their city and their country without occupiers. But actually, that was not what happened in many cases. Though there is a lot of history that we've taught in schools that partisans, did this, great battle liberating Tirana, and there were fights, but there, not many dead bodies in the streets, but there were a few, both sides, partisans and Germans. But what I would like, to move on to now is there are a few certain orders that came from Hoxha to Dalindreu, who was the commander in charge of Tirana liberation and Mehmet Sheil. In his orders, he clearly instructs them to detain people who are influential individuals, to keep them a strict guard, prohibit them from talking to anyone, detain them. And on 10th of November, he instructs clearly Dalindreu, specific task to him to stop, arrest, execute influential individuals.
So to
which
execute
now
them.
I'll come back to what you mentioned, to Montaz Kokalari, Basim Kokalari, Syriac Kokalari, which were 14 people, among 14 people, 14 dead bodies found in Hotel Bristol in Tirana, where now is the National Museum, but it is on the right side, I think, used to be the building where the bodies were found. And one of the Mike Thornton, another British officer who was allowed to enter Tirana only on 17th of November, when Tirana that morning was declared liberated. And Mike Thornton's observations are very, very interesting. He writes that for a week, he says, 800 people have been arrested, not all collaborators. And prisons are full, he says again on 22nd of November. And it's very interesting. He makes a comment that it's just stuck with me forever. He says, Tirana today, after a week of liberation, looks like looks like in any other capital that Nazis occupied after a week of Nazi occupation. So that's very interesting to me.
It's like they may have liberated it from the possibly only 300 or so Nazis, but it was definitely not free from the partisans, from the communists.
Yeah, that's his observation. But it is interesting, and this information that is there, is in the archives, and it's even Albanian archives. If you go into them, there are hundreds of reports of partisans or the commanders sending reports back to Tirana and saying they're not even reporting they were fighting Germans. They were reporting that they were fighting the reactionaries, this family, the confiscating properties, taking a cow or a sack of grain, things like that. And that's what I think what we are suffering today, lack of that information, lack of the truth, which is led to, to people like the gentleman you have in your studio to be persecuted, the father to escape, the brother to be arrested, for the family to be persecuted. And my family also, I come from the background, but I didn't have anyone in prison. So we inherited a state that didn't improve the country, left nothing. The legacy is poverty, is a society that still trusts no one, a society that believes that there is no one who will be punished. And that is tragedy. It is tragedy. And in Albanian history, Albanian communist dictatorship history, it's a very, very unique, and it's very interesting internationally, if you ask my opinion. The rest of the West abandoned Stalinism after Stalin's death, but Albania's continued until 1991, March 31st.
But why why are they covering, I don't know if covering up is the right word. Why is this not being taught correctly in schools? Why are people not telling the whole story? Why are we not, I mean, how many people were killed, extrajudicially executed during this time? Why is nobody talking about it? Is it a conscious thing? Is it a deliberate thing? Or is it let's just do the minimum and try and forget about it?
Well, I think it's a mix of all that. I think I myself, I can also blame myself for doing little when I was much younger, and I was in Albania, and I can't even blame myself, or I've got some guilt with me, because I worked with former Shqipërinë officers, and I knew there were stories that they told about how they tortured the people they detained, and they took pride. They mocked people, and I was there listening to them. I didn't laugh, but I was thinking, why didn't I really confront these people? But when you're young, you don't have that confidence, and probably your intellectual thinking is not that great. Because I think we lacked that information, and we were not just, the education was so centered that you have to believe what you're told. So I think what I'm trying to say is that people like myself also should be blamed. My generation should take some blame for not exposing the truth and not really being determined to seek accountability, legal accountability, and doing things properly. There is morally, the dictatorship is being morally, it is being sort of condemned. But in Albania, it is a specific case. There is not a case like, we don't have a case yet that a guard or a head of a prison who, under his watch or with his contribution, people were tortured, inhumanly treated, murdered. There is not a case that has gone to a court, that we have a decision. There is a decision that a judge has taken to find the truth, what happened. Yes. There is not a sort of, not true retribution. I'm not looking for retribution. What I am looking is for a legal responsibility, accountability, that this country or a victim should just say, well, at least, it's not revenge, but at least something. There is a knowledge of the crimes they committed to innocent people.
I was reading a book last night, Mud Sweeter Than Honey, and Margot Raymer, yes, a Polish author. And there were two cases I read a bit before I went to bed last night, and there was one, a father, a guy from the north of Albania, the Shqipërinë wanted some information from him. So they took him to a room and they interrogated him and they tortured him. And he wouldn't give up the information, or he wouldn't say what they wanted him to say. So they went and got his 20-year-old daughter. They took her to the next room, stripped her to her underwear, and beat her to the point she was almost unconscious. And then they brought her into the room where her father was, in front of him, and beat her in front of him. And then they told him, we are going to gang rape her in front of you unless you tell us the information that we want, which, was a forced confession, basically. And I was then reading about what they did to Maria Tucci, when they put her in a bag, a sack, and put in feral cats in the sack and beat the cats. So they scratched her till she was unrecognizable. She died of pneumonia because they just gave her penicillin in the hospital in Shkodra in the end, but obviously exacerbated by the injuries that were caused by her. And I mean, these are just so brutal. I mean, this is beyond, just shooting someone, which is also not okay. This is beyond just executing someone with a gun. This is calculated. And then I hear people, and I live in a part of Tirana where the people who live there, I live in a communist era building, they were all sort of prosecutors or judiciary or senior police during the regime. And if you go to the local coffee shops around there and you talk about Enver Hoxhës, all of them will say, but we had schools, we had railways, we had industry, there was no crime, there was, we had production, this wouldn't have happened. They have this rosy view of it. And I don't know where to start with these people. But that's just my 2 cents on it. There are people today who still glorify it, and even young people. It's not just older people that are saying, oh, yes, but, look at the schools he built, look at the buildings he built. It's younger generation as well.
What did he build? What did he build? Which is the only thing we could say to them is concrete. That's all they built, is a concrete building. Houses that were no water running down, no sewage in most of the cases. I mean, I can tell you, I can have, hours of conversation about what sort of buildings were built. But, there were things that were done. We can't say that during 45 years, nothing good was done, because some things were done, But to be honest, in 1991, left Albania was what did we find? Like the gentleman said, I came from Australia and I looked, these people are poor and unfed, and, you walked in the streets of in a village, but because I'm not talking about Tirana, but I'm talking the village where I grew up. I left the village when I was 21. And we looked like victims of a war. I mean, there was no food. If I show you a picture of my mother when she was only 45, you'd be just saying, how much food this woman ate? I mean, it's just, so what are you proud of, and you ignore the fact of hundreds of thousands of people in turn deported, unfairly murdered, executed, young men. For what for? What for? Because they had sort of different idea, or sort of different idea, and that was different idea was a thought police. The police believed you had a different idea. But go back to what those people you meet in Tirana, because I have left Tirana and you're still there.